My association with George goes obviously back to when I was a little boy. George was the elder brother of my granddad Walter, and from a very early age, and I'm talking 6, 7 or 8, my granddad used to talk about him. He was my granddad's favourite brother out of the 4. He told me that he died in the war, in the First World War, so I originally had a telephone reading with her. She started off fairly easily. There was certain references to my family, my mum and my dad, but within probably a couple of minutes, she a sort of a tone changed, and she said, "I've got somebody coming here, very, very strong to me. It's Walter." And she said, "No, that's not his name. It's Wall." Now everybody knew my granddad as Wall. They shortened his name to Wall. Everybody knew that. And she said, "He's got somebody with him." He said he's quite small. He says, but he's a military man, and he's bringing him forward, and I can see him there, and he's a military man. She said, but he hasn't got a soldier's cap on. He's got a strange, funny little hat on the side of his head. And then she said, oh, right, okay, hang on. He's right in front of me now, and I don't know why, but I cannot stop saying G22, G22, G22. And she repeated that, must have been 15 or 20 times. She said, I can't stop saying it. And she says, he knows that you will know that means something. It did mean something, because I recognised that as a grave marker number. She said, I can see white crosses, and she said, he's saying the 19th. 19 is important. 19th is important. She said, it's your birthday. No, it's not. It's your anniversary. Well, myself and my wife were married on the 19th of July. She also said, he's telling me that it's 1 of 4. So very, very clearly she's saying there is 1 of 4, which meant nothing to me at all. I had found out that there was a military cemetery at Pozières, but I'd only looked at it very, very briefly, because at that point in time, I never had anything to go on. After the reading was completed, I went and looked at the plan of the cemetery, and there were 4 plots. I always had a feeling, and this had been there for a number of years, that I believed that George existed whole and complete somewhere, not lost on the battlefield like tens of thousands of these men. And because there were over 1,200 unknown burials at Pozières, I believed there could have been a possibility that he was there. So I travelled to meet her, and I took with me a plan of the Pozières graveyard. And she said to me, George is here, you've come about the grave. Now that came completely out of the blue. I had given her no information why I wanted a second reading. At that point in time, she said, well, take the plan out, it was in a brown envelope, and put it face down on the table. She said, when it stops, then that's information for me. And it did stop, and she touched the back of the paper, and she said, mark the paper. So I put a pen mark on the back of the paper. And then she said, well, you have a go. So took the thing, did exactly the same across all the back of the sheet of A4 paper, and it stopped. And he says, now touch the back of the paper. And it was within probably 1 millimetre or 2 millimetres. So she says, right, turn it over. When she turned it over, it was a very rough plan. The graves were shown in blocks, not as individuals. But in the 3rd block of the block of 4 that were in the cemetery, the mark corresponded to the block between graves 18 and 24, and it was just into the box, which indicated where G22 was. It was exactly the right grave line, and it corresponded in the box. And then she said to me, 1 of 4. Again, the 1 of 4 came out. And then really after that point in time, we sort of lost touch, sort of thing, in terms of her talking to George. It was only a little bit later on when she said, oh, George is back with me, and he says he's now saying he's close to Albert. He's close to Albert. He wants you to know he's close to Albert. Meant nothing to me. I don't know anybody Albert. None of his brothers were called Albert or anything. And then she says, no, it's important, this. He's close to Albert, or it's Albert or Alberton or Albertone. He's close to this person. Meant nothing to me at all. We finished the reading, I came home, and I went back on the Commonwealth War Grave site where the listings were on there for the cemetery at Pozières, where I'd found that G22 in that block was an unknown soldier, the only one out of all the 4 blocks that was an unknown individual in that grave. And when I looked at the grave G21, which was to the left of G22, the person buried in there was Private Albone. And at that point in time, I was convinced then that George was buried in grave G22.